Welcome to Flashpoint, the Fire Inside podcast, featuring leadership and team building principles designed to ignite your inner fire. Now your host, international speaker and best-selling author, Frank Viscuso.
Now, before I want to make sure that I pronounce Sautel. Is that correct?
It's just like saw, S-A-W, and then tell. I'm telling someone about it. Ellis Island took the French out of it. You know, my great-great-grandfather migrated here, and it was D. Sautele or something. I don't know, but Ellis Island said, nope, you're Sautel now.
So where I work, and where I did work as a firefighter, but where I live and grew up is not too far from Ellis Island.
Wow.
Yeah, we're very close. Now, we were just talking a moment ago about when firefighters talk about or tell stories about fires, you want to know more about what was going on in their mind. And we're live right now, so I just want to expand on that thought, and then we're going to get right into who you are and your story. But when I'd written the book Common Valor, my original thought was I want to tell these stories that we know about as firefighters, but nobody else knows about. And maybe they were heroic stories, maybe they were tragic stories. But so I would interview firefighters, and that's what appealed to me when I started hearing about their doubts, their fears, their anxiety that they dealt with leading up to that incident of, wait, if I'm ever in this situation, do I really have what it takes?
Right.
And I loved how transparent they were with me, because on the surface, firefighters are strong, firefighters are in control, firefighters are tough. But sometimes I like to compare that to, well, on the surface, comedians are very funny, but sometimes they're struggling inside. And firefighters are strong and tough, but sometimes they're struggling inside. I've just read your book, The Rescuer. One day, Jason, you need to know this. It takes me 20 days to read a book.
Right.
I don't read fast. I read your book in one day, and it's great. It's one firefighter story of courage, darkness, and a relentless love that saved him. And I want to start by introducing you to our viewers, thanking you for coming on board, and ask if you could share a little bit about just your story from the ground up, growing up, what it was like, and then we'll just get into it.
Yeah, not a problem, man. I super appreciate you having me on too, man. It's just such a blessing to be here and having these conversations with you, both on the podcast and the ones we get to have off this site on the phones, man. So super appreciate you on all levels there, Chief. Anyways, so my past and growing up was tough. Like, I think a lot of firefighters sometimes gravitate to the job hoping to kind of fill the void that maybe they had of feeling like lost and hopeless and maybe growing up in a bad situation. And that's just one camp. I know there's a lot that maybe their parents were firefighters and they just was in the blood and they wanted to go on. But for me, I got into the fire service because as a child, my mom left our house when I was about 7, 8 years old. And I was left with my dad. And my dad was a Vietnam vet who just didn't know how to be a parent. And he made me the lowest of his priorities. So life was tough. And when I saw the fire department and the fire service as a whole, I went, how cool is that to be able to help people when they're at their worst? But I'll be honest with you, it was almost like one of the bad reasons for joining, because I actually kind of joined the fire department hoping it would fix me, which it really didn't, you know? And so that's how I got in. The cool story about how it happened of more of a tangible sort of way was when I was really getting in a lot of trouble, a group of firefighters stopped and looked at me and they said, hey, have you ever thought about being a firefighter? I was like, I really haven't. I mean, what do you guys do? Just squirt water on fire is a big deal, you know, being a young teenager and stuff. And they explained the job to me. And I'm telling you, Frank, it caught hold of me, man. It just made me want to know more about it. So the younger years, I could spend all day there. And I think my story parallels a lot of stories of others, you know, just growing up, feeling unloved, and then getting in the fire service and finding family. And that was a big draw to it, was being part of a family, being part of something bigger than myself that serves something greater than me.
Well, that's great. I love how you said that, because we often say firefighters have two families. And you have the one at home, which honestly should be your priority, but you have the one at work, and that needs to be a priority too. I was just with members of the Patterson Fire Department for the past 2 days, and I said to them at the beginning of this class I was teaching is, what I want more than anything else when I leave here is I want you to have a good life. And you're going to spend 1/4 of your life for the next, or for these 25 or 30 years, wearing that uniform, sitting next to that person you're sitting next to right now. That's your family. And we need to get it right. And I like that. I like that you started with that. Now, these guys, you said you were kind of getting in trouble, just doing wrong things with the wrong people type of trouble.
Yeah. When I break it down like this, and I actually speak into young men's lives now, and people saying, when you don't have love with inside your home, true love, you often go chase it. And most of us chase on the street. So I was chasing it with being a skater. And, growing up in Southern California, I never took on the ideologies of the group I was with, but being in the skating crowd, being a young white guy, the skinheads kind of took me in. Now, again, I want to be so clear. I never took on their ideology, but they were asking me or wanting me to be part of them and showing me something like a love that I thought was love, and it wasn't. So I was messing up with them and causing a lot of problems. And one day I actually just stood up to them. I said, "You guys are a pack of idiots," to say that in the G-rated version, and walked away from them. And that's when I joined this thing called the California Conservation Corps and started, trying to figure out how to change my life and turn things around. But what stuck in my head was the day that, that group of firefighters just kind of hit me up and said, "Jason, have you ever thought about being a firefighter? Because you have, the physical abilities as a skater. I was standing up to people and they knew about that. And there's just a lot of good things that happened there. And that's what drew me to the fire service. And then what drew me out of being a wildland firefighter, which I first started, is kind of a funny story. I'm out here in California. It was in 93, and the Santa Ana winds were blowing, and we were hitting all these fires. It was just like craziest thing ever. And one night I'm sitting on the rig,
Malibu
and
fire.
Yeah, Malibu fires, all of that stuff was burning. Yeah, I was down there for that. And I sit there with my captain, who was a CDF captain, which is now CAL FIRE, but we were CDF back then. He looks over, he's like, "You know what, kid?" And I'm 18 years old at the time. He's like, "Do you know what those LA City guys are making? They're making like $50,000 a year." And I'm like, "What, dude? I'm making $425 an hour, and I don't even get paid after midnight, dude. I'm going to go be a city fire." So it's a joke with them that I'm like, I'm going to go chase the big bucks, and stuff. But honestly, I always wanted to be in an area where we fought fire, and I just was drawn more to the structural side. And when I got hired with the Oakland Fire Department, which is where I did the majority of my career, that's where I found it. And I actually loved that side of it too. So there's the wildland part still inside of me, because being out here in California, you could work at any big city and you're going to go to a wildland fire eventually. But structural firefighting and being in the inner city is an area I really like to work.
Yeah, and when you're talking about fire departments, Oakland Fire Department is a busy fire department. EMS fires, it's the real deal. You could be a firefighter and see 3 fires your whole career in some places in this country. You could see 3 in a day sometimes in Oakland.
Right.
So, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, we had that was funny when I was a new kid in the OFD. Dude, we hit 3 fires on a couple of my first shifts, and I'm dead. And, we didn't have extra sets of turnout. We had one coat. We didn't have turnout pants. So you just wore your wool pants and your station boots into fire. And I remember being on the back of the truck just shivering, going to fires because it was so full of my own sweat. It's 4 a.m. It's not East Coast cold, but, cold's cold when it's 45, 50 degrees and you're in an open tiller bucket going to fire. And I just remember thinking to myself, this is the greatest job ever. I absolutely loved it, even when it hurt. Now, I'll be honest with you, after going to a bunch of fires later in my career, I knew they were coming. So I'd look at the new guys and like, "Yeah, I'm actually cool if we don't catch a fire tonight. You guys okay with that?" And like, "Oh, shut up. We want a fire." So it's kind of fun to see that progression in the growth, in young men and women.
For sure. And that is the natural progression. In your book, chapter 1, you go right into it with this story about the Bay Bridge and a jumper. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was dual trained also as a paramedic, because it's just all the fire departments out here were going to that. And I knew that would get me a foot in the door. So, went to paramedic school and gave me an extra percentage. But that aside, we were responding to the Bay Bridge for a jumper. And most people think of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is on the other side of San Francisco. Well, the Bay Bridge connects Oakland to San Francisco, and we get quite a few jumpers there too. And we respond to that. I thought it was just going to be your can of corn. "Hey, bro, let's hop back over here. Let's talk about it. Let the CHP negotiators get there. And then we just stand by if there's an emergency that happens or we need to rappel and go get him." And I thought this guy was the same, but it come to find out, he just was in a bad spot in his life, and I could see something different in his eyes. But what kind of freaked me out was the emptiness that was in him and in his eyes was the same emptiness in me. And this guy actually said sorry, looked at me, and just took the eternal plunge in front of me. And watching someone's life being taken in front of you, it really caught me off guard, because I've been to tons of suicides, tons of fatality, whatever, shootings, car wrecks, fires, and I've never watched anyone actually die in front of me. But what freaked me out more than anything, Frank, was what I saw taking him down was the darkness that I felt inside of me that I was trying to fill with being a firefighter, and it wasn't working. It took him down. I felt like it was going to take me down too. So it was a really rough and a turning point in my life of like, all right, my childhood, which absolutely sucked, my adulthood, which I'm kind of faking that I'm happy all the time when I wasn't because I was miserable. It all just came to a headway at that moment. And I felt like I was going to become that guy, honestly.
That's powerful. Did you talk to anybody up to this point in your life and say, hey, this is what's going on? Or was it just something that was strictly internal?
No, I was a complete liar with my crew, with myself, even in the academy as a liar. In the academy, I didn't fit in as much because everyone seemed happy. They all seemed like they had it together. I felt like a fish inside of the tank looking out. I wanted to experience same happiness. I was part of the brotherhood and the sisterhood, but there was just like, I couldn't completely attach myself to it because of the emptiness of me. And so people ask me, hey, what was it like? Did you play sports as a kid? Oh yeah, I played football. I was lying. I didn't play football because I couldn't afford a uniform. And if I asked my dad for a uniform, he'd beat me. I would sit there and say, oh, what was school like? School was awesome, man. Great. Well, what was graduation like? It was great. It wasn't. I didn't graduate high school. So I was a liar because I was too scared to show the people the real me back then and stuff. And I never lied about where I was in my life or tell a lie to like get the job or, tell a blatant lie to make something happen. I would just never open up. And, firemen, they're inquisitive. And if you just don't answer them, they're going to keep hammering you. So I just came, I was fine. I played football. I graduated. Well, no, I didn't. So I never opened up to anyone at that point. And I stayed closed even during that point. Plus in the fire service during that time, late 90s, early 2000s, bro, you didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't. If a guy's going through a divorce, you'd kind of like, oh, sorry about that type of stuff. But you didn't open up about your traumas. It wasn't part of the gig. I'll be honest with you.
It wasn't a cool thing to do. I get it. I think that's one of the things that I like seeing happening just in the world in general, but in the fire service, it's okay to say, I'm normal no matter what I'm going through. It's normal.
Yeah.
It took me a while to come clean with telling people some of the things I went through growing up. For me, I was a guy that I dealt with anxiety and stress. Mm-hmm. I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I'd have panic attacks. I'm 16, 17, 18 years old. I'm having panic. I don't even know what they are, but I'm having a panic attack, thinking something's wrong with me. And come to realize was, first of all, many people deal with that, but I just wasn't learning how to process or deal with certain things in my life. Mm-hmm. And on another show, maybe even today, we'll go into some of the things that people do in that situation. For me, the main thing is I learned to change the channel. Whatever my mind focuses on, whatever your mind focuses on, you're going to get more of that. I had to say, well, let me stop focusing on what's negative because I'm stressing out over stuff that probably either it's not going to happen or it happened 5 years ago and it's over with. Right. Let me stop thinking about that and start thinking about all the good that's happening. Your story, in the book, you talk about a lot of incidents. You have some ones that have really good outcomes. And then like every firefighter, you could do everything right and things can still go wrong. You have some that are, and I felt these, having been a guy that has been through a couple incidents where things didn't go right. I think any firefighter can read this and say, man, I get that. I've been there. Different scenario, but same feeling. But for you, I guess it must have felt like stuff's kind of like somebody's dropping rocks on you. It's getting heavier and heavier. Would that make sense? It's
a great statement. A chief that I had a long time ago, whether he ripped it off from somewhere else, because let's be honest, a lot of what we teach in the fire service, we rip off from someone else and we try to cite it if possible, but you just pick it up along the way, But a chief told me, he's like, every call you go to, you pick a piece of it up, but you also leave a piece of yourself there. And he always said, leave the best part of you there, because you're also going to leave some muscle fibers that have been torn, a back sprain, some other things on those scenes too. But walk away leaving that scene with the best version of you, because it's going to bless the people you've been called to serve. But on the flip side, you're going to pick up a piece of every scene. Now, for me, yes, I would return to the firehouse from a horrible scene. And in Oakland, we have a lot of people trapped in house fires. And you're in a spot where, if you want to call it blessed to be, grabs and pull people out, our department does. And I'm not there anymore, so I did do it. And it would hurt you, to see someone. And what cut me the deepest is not the people that didn't make it. It was the families, because you're looking into the eyes and the souls of the loved ones who are lost. So I never had an incident that totally tore me up. It was basically, what I found out was I didn't have anywhere to leave the pain that I was picking up along the way, the cumulative effects. And to make matters worse, I was also trying to use the fire service to heal me. And so it was like a double whammy, if you will. So my joke that I always say is my PTSD had PTSD from my childhood. And if you think about that, a lot of us do that. We have the negatives, the stressors that came with us into the job already. Then we're picking up new ones. And as you mentioned, if we don't have any skills or a set developed on a place where to leave those and work our way through them, because I'll tell you what, they come back to haunt me, the same ones sometimes, but I now have a skill set to work my way through them. And I think that's something we should all do. And I say kudos to you, because I know that's something that you talk about and teach with people quite a bit.
Yeah, well, and you talk about PTSD. Did you know at the time, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, or you couldn't even?
I couldn't even explain it. All I explain it is like my book was, I was in a darkness. Nothing was good, right? Pulling someone out of a fire, it didn't make me feel better. Saving a life didn't make me feel better. Having a boat, a truck, a house paid for, and out here in California, fireman makes a pretty good living and stuff. And so I lived outside the city, so I was able to afford more. But bro, I never felt better. The truck never made me feel better. Hanging out with the guys at the bar never made me feel better. Hanging out with a hot girl never made me feel better. And so I was just kind of shutting down into my own little world. And basically I didn't want to be around anyone as much as I did. Like, I'd go to the firehouse and I loved the camaraderie. But then on that other side, the camaraderie is here. But then over here, there's pain. It's like they're pushing back and forth on each other. And it was almost as if I was going nuts in my own mind. And psychologically, I'm okay. But psychologically, I was also not okay. And that's something I try to tell firefighters out there. Dude, we don't need to be all kumbaya all the time. I get it. You don't, come back for every scene. Oh, let's huddle up and how are you and everything. But what I tell people is we always teach to recognize the ones who are struggling. Well, I'm actually getting a little tougher as I go on through love by saying, those of you who are struggling, we're now giving you the tools you need. You need to reach out for them too. Because like me, I never reached out for them and it almost took me down.
You said a lot of good things. First of all, earlier you said, I'm not sure what Chief said this, so you kind of don't know who to quote. I'm going to give you a tip on that. Try to cite the person who gave you the quote 3 times, and after that, it's yours. Okay? I
like it. I like it. All right. So I'm going to cite you 3 times for my next book. Then it's mine. Right now, I'm just kidding. I got you.
So,
thanks. I appreciate it.
I just saw somebody posted this on a fire service page on Facebook. What's a more powerful emotion, love or hate?
Ooh.
For me, I think love.
Yeah, love, because love conquers hate. You know, hate has a very worldly feel to it, but from my spiritual side, because everyone knows, well, most people know, I lean onto my faith. I'm not here to preach, teach, and talk about Christ crucified and stuff, but I'd be fake if I didn't tell people I lean on my faith, and love conquers all. I could cite you 1,000,000 different verses where that's true. Well, maybe probably 1,000 different verses if we want to be correct there. But, I think hate is an amazing crushing moment where it's, I mean, dude, don't get me wrong. I feel hatred and I just want to throat punch something, right? But then love, which is much stronger because it continues forever, it overpowers the hate and it mellows us down and calms us down and eventually shows us how to conquer hate. So my vote on that one is love is a stronger power.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think hatred destroys you, but love expands you.
Yeah,
and gives you the ability to share. Now, let's get into the moment where you were at your house. You're off duty. I think you just came back from a shift and you make this decision that you're going to end it. This is a powerful part of your story. It's a powerful part of the book, but talk about what happened.
You know what's so crazy about this is my buddy, he to this day, we talk quite often. He still won't let me put his name out there, I think, so I won't do it. I'm at home. I'm at the end of my rope. I haven't went to a church. A church turned me away. I'm not a Christian at the time. And finally I decide I'm done. I'm going to end my life. And what's so scary right there, Frank, is I felt a sense of peace that wasn't real peace, but it was truly looking at it. The devil's like, all right, I won. I'm done with you now. I got you. And it's like he moved on. And I was just like in a world of, I'm just done, you know? And it was such a sad feeling, but an empty feeling. But I was just going to go through because I didn't want to be beat down anymore. I didn't want to be kicked around. I felt like from day one that I was born all the way up until, you know, my mid-20s where this happened, I was just kicked around, ready to be done. And what saved me was when I really was getting ready to leave my house to head out to my surf spot, because my biggest thing is I just didn't want to be another bad memory for another first responder or firefighter. So I was going to make sure no one found me. That was the biggest thing. I was going to paddle as far out in the ocean as I could and let the animals take care of me out there. But as I was getting ready to do that, a San Francisco fireman came over and visited me. And he didn't even know what he's doing, but he looked at me. And what I tell people is, as firefighters, every time we meet someone or walk anywhere, we're assessing them. We're assessing the room, right? We're always assessing. It's something that's just grind into our DNA. And he looked at me. He's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm cool." He's like, "No, you're not. Let's go out to breakfast." And he took me to breakfast. And it was, in my mind, a total God moment, because that was it. Nothing was going to stop me, man. That was the day my life was going to end. And then a guy came over and invited me to breakfast, and something happened at that moment. And I'm not going to say it was like a one, I was healed all at that moment, but I started recognizing what you mentioned a few minutes, the good in things. And when a girl entered my life, she said something that you just said: concentrate on the good stories. Concentrate. The bad stories are there. We're not hiding from them. We're not faking them out. But so often, if I hold a door open for them and they just blast on through, I think about that rude person all day, right? Why did they do that? Why did they do it? Think about the million other good things that happened that day, but I'm concentrating on that rude person. Well, then I have to reflect back on me and say, yo, bro, don't hold doors open for people if you're expecting a thank you, first off, okay? Because you shouldn't open the door for them if you want something to return out of it. Number two, you're right. Let's concentrate on the good stories and work on not making the bad stories own us. And that's a huge thing that I like to preach out there to folks too.
Yeah. And, you know, you talk about firefighters always assessing things. We talk about that, about our awareness because of what we do every day. We see, think about a police officer. A police officer goes out to dinner. Where do they sit? With their back against the wall facing a door, right? Because they're assessing things. A firefighter walks into a room. They're looking for exits. They're looking for a way out. But sometimes we can see something in people because we deal with people at their worst moments, and we can see something's going on here. Right. And
no, I agree on that. When your job, you know, the way I explain it is, honestly, if you want to break down what a firefighter does, we're just a tool for human tragedy. We show up with our tools with us, and we ride on toolboxes, but we don't know what we're going to get till we get there. So we're just basically a toolbox for human tragedy. And as you said, you learn a lot about people when you show up and they're in their worst moments of their life, and you're there to help them figure it out, or figure it out for them, how to get them out of those moments. So I agree with that totally.
You know, there's this thing, I hear some firefighters talk about this phrase that many of them use, saying, "It's not my emergency." And I think I know what they mean when they're trying to, the original premise is, hey, don't you panic. It's not your emergency. You're supposed to be in control.
Right.
But I think some people look at it and they say, hey, it's not my emergency. No big deal. It's not. But what I'm trying to explain to this generation coming up, or people that don't understand it, is it is your emergency, because when you took the oath, you swore to inherit their problems and their emergencies as your own. Like I like to say, it may be their structure that's on fire, but it's your structure fire.
Right.
You know?
Right. I'm in total agreement with that, because that's why I'm not as much as, like, mantras kind of bug me a little, because they just stop. We need explanations. I get, like you, I understand what you're saying is not your emergency, because maybe as a senior officer, senior firefighter, I'm trying to calm you down, let you know to chill. It's not our emergency, but hear me out. It is our emergency because we've been called to it. You, like you said, rose your hand. You're inheriting it. We got to show up. What I like to tell people way in advance now is I tell them, here's what I want you to hear. You cannot do whatever you want to do or become whatever you want to be. Does that mean we get to be sluggards and not work? No, you got to work your tail off. But I was told my whole life, you can accomplish anything you want if you work hard enough. Bro, if that's the case, I was the worst firefighter and paramedic on the face of the earth because people died at my hands when I was trying to save them. But over here, this camp's teaching you can become anything you want to be as long as you try hard enough. No, I say try hard enough, work your tail off, look to God and say, I did all I could. All right. Because we should find the joy in the response, not the outcome. If we looked for joy in the outcomes, bro, we'd have a miserable job and it's going to take you down, right? So the joy should come from obeying orders, obeying your oath, going out the door, giving your all, and then walking away, standing tall, not pridefully, but humbly knowing you did everything you could do, but God had a different plan and you were part of his plan. And the failure of the person not being pulled out of the fire was part of the plan. I don't know why, I can't figure it out, but I can stand tall and humbly saying we showed up and we were obedient and did what we were called to do. So I tell the young folks, find joy in obedience, not the outcomes.
That's great advice. And because again, we said this, I think earlier, but you could do everything right and things will still go wrong. And you may think, what did I do wrong? Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. I mentioned Patterson Fire Department at the beginning of this. I wanted to shout
great
out.
Department, by the way, too, man. Wow.
Well, check this out. And we're talking about Patterson, New Jersey. In the last 8 days, they had 10 saves, EMS-related saves. 10.
Right.
And when I talked to them, I said, you need to be really proud of yourself. There's 10 people walking on this planet today that would not be walking on this planet today if it wasn't for them.
Right.
That's something to be proud of. But it doesn't always work out that way.
It doesn't. You know, and I do come from an old school camp too, because, like one of the chiefs I was working with, I'm not joking. He came on in the early 50s. Think about that. I mean, that was an eternity ago in the fire service, right? And what I loved was taking on some of that he taught me. And it's all the same thing. Is his level of thinking was, and again, it was hardcore, was, well, if you didn't do the job, you should be reprimanded. If you did your job, why are we awarding you? And I kind of like that, and don't get me wrong, I'm about accolades and doing all that. But I remember when they were giving me an award for a grab that I had, and I truly, my heart, I felt that, Chief, because I was like, gosh darn it, man, I don't want this award. I just want to be okay. I don't care about this award. Then when someone says, thank you for your service, I get where they're going. But our thank you comes every 2 weeks in the form of a paycheck. You know what I mean? And I'm of the camp that if you didn't do your job, maybe you shouldn't be getting that paycheck. So I don't want to sound so hardcore, but I like to find that balance. So when I hear something like the guys that are Patterson are doing, that's a department that just gets it. Those guys get it and they're doing their job. You don't hear about it nationwide, but they're making differences day in and day out. So that's
why I wanted to say it on this show is that, they did make a difference and continue to make a difference. And firefighters many of them are like that, man. I don't need a citation. I don't need an award. I don't need a plaque. But I'll tell you what we don't do enough of. We don't do enough of turning to the guy or that girl in the jump seat next to you and saying, you did a great job on that call.
Right.
That's what we need more of.
I fully agree. Yeah. One thing I used to take on when I was working a busy engine company or truck company was with a new person, even responding, I would slide over to the jump seat on the other side. I know, Chiefs. Yeah, I had my seatbelt on. No, I'm just joking. But I would slide over to the other side and tell them, hey, take a breather. Just calm down for a minute. In a second, we're going to be going from a 0 to 100 miles per hour. Yeah. Just hang on, stay right behind me, and let's go. And I think that's something we need to do too, because we drill, we love drilling. But sometimes when we get to the fire ground, it's like we just expect them to use that drilling. I even on the way to the fire like to give them a little chill out talk for a second, and explain to them what's going on too. And I think it's great to do it before and after. It's a good thing.
It's like that movie Major League when the one kid is brand new, he's a rookie, he's in a dugout, and he's like getting all excited. He's like, "Hey, relax, we got about 180 more of these to go."
Right. Well, it's a good thing. And when you see someone do something good, we're always so quick to pick up and call it the bad, beat up a Proby, beat up another engine company or truck company. Like I say, what's wrong with saying, "Hey, nice work, man. Hey, good job, man. You did really good here. Check this out." We can also learn from some little trip ups that we had too, including myself. And I think when you're teaching people, you need to take yourself as an example. Say, I learned a lot from a couple mistakes I made on this fire too. You may not have seen them, but I saw them, and I'm going to try to get better for the next one.
Yeah, humility goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're back to your story, how you became a firefighter, what challenges you went through, this dark time, you trying to pull yourself out. Enter Christy. Let's talk about your wife. Or this woman before she is your wife.
Right. So things in my life were slowly taking a change, and I was just kind of trying to figure things out. And I go out to dinner with my mom and my niece at a restaurant where all the cool college kids hang out. It's the cool crowd and everything. I've been there 100 times, but I was usually sitting in the bar. This time I'm having dinner, and this waitress across the restaurant just like caught my attention because she was so beautiful, but she had like a glow about her. And what impressed me, and I know this sounds so weird, it's kind of like one of those good firefighters work with, that they look the job and act the job too. They act it out. Well, she was just like living her faith out in front of me just by serving other people, by taking orders, being truly friendly. And so she came over to me, and dude, I was tongue tied. And as we know, just from this podcast, I have a lot of words in me and they come out. She caught me, and it was just her inner beauty and the outer beauty came out. And her and I started dating, and she's the one who actually first started professing her faith to me, which at that time in my life, I hated everything that was good, including Christians, but I couldn't find a way to hate her. When I say hate, it wasn't a deep hatred, but it was like what we were talking about earlier. All the negative was within me. So if I saw positive someone else, maybe you could call it jealousy that I had. And so the jealousy made me not like them. Well, she started just, talking about love and telling me about things. And, first time I ever broken down, we had a wreck outside the firehouse where a little girl was hit and run by a car, and we were out back playing basketball. And so I actually ran down to the scene, and I was telling her about how it just crushed me that I was holding the girl, and the only thing I could think about was not letting the mom's last memory be the mangled girl's body. So I'm trying to cover her up as I'm holding her and trying to get her head covered because the mom's running down, and her heart, I can hear it breaking in real time and stuff. And it was just rough. And I'm explaining to my wife, Christy, my girlfriend, Christy at the time, I'd never opened up like that. I was just opening up, and I see her crying, and bro, I'm like, all right, here we go. I messed up another relationship. And I said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone there with that. And she goes, no, yeah, I'm sad about the little girl and mom, but what crushes me is that you had to deal with that. I just cried. And so she, first person that ever poured love into me. I'm like, wait, what? You're concerned about me? I'm telling you this hideous scene where a girl lost her life and the mom witnessed it, but your concern is for me. And that's when the change started happening, and I started I started able to see the goodness in things because she showed me the goodness within her. She poured it into me. So that's why I light up. And that was, 20 years ago. And we've been married for 18 years because I asked her to marry me for 2 years and she kept saying no, but I finally did something right. She finally said yes.
Well, you're persistent, and that's what that's all about. And so
that's for sure. I'm not going to stop, man. Breach that wall, right? Whatever it takes and stuff. Yeah.
You're very open about your faith now.
Mm-hmm.
And what was that transition like from you going to saying, hey, I don't like this group of people, to saying, hey, this is what I believe in, and I'm okay with it. I want to let you know about it, and not in a way where you're trying to convert anybody, but you have the confidence and belief in something, and you want to share it.
Yeah, well, that's like anything. If I'm dead set that I think one of the greatest tools on a fire scene is a well-trained and courageous nozzleman, is one of the greatest tools of the piece of equipment you can have on the fire ground, right? I'm going to go out and preach that, right? I'm going to preach. I'm going to talk about all the other things that come in, coordination, everything that we want in there. But when I have something that I've seen work and something that can truly change lives and change eternities, how can I not preach it? I have to preach it. Now, hear me out on this. I can sit in the Castro of San Francisco or in Berkeley, and I'm not street preaching. I'm not throwing it out there. I'm just hanging out with people and getting to know them. I'm hanging out with firefighters. I'm hanging out with someone who's struggling, someone who's like maybe struggling with things I struggled. And I talk to them like, dude, this world's loud. It's going to just be so loud. It's going to pour so much crap into you, and it's going to pour so much negativity into you. And this is what helped me, man. I'm going to pray it helps you, but I also just don't go heavy. It's like if someone's having a heart attack, I don't go out and give them diabetic medication, right? I'm not pumping them full of what they need. Or if someone is having a stroke, I'm not giving them all the medicines for someone having a heart attack. You have to assess each person, what they can handle. Maybe I am going to write hardcore Christ crucified on someone because they need to hear that. Or it's, yo, let's go grab a drink or something. So whatever they like to drink, and hang out. So, but I am going to let people see my faith, because if I don't let them see my faith, I'm fake, bro. I am fake. So whenever I start a conversation, I'm like, listen, this is who I am. This is where I'm at. But I understand many of you don't hold the same beliefs of me. Guess what? I still love you. And the more conservative I get in my faith, the more it makes me want to love on all people. So that's how I approach people and keep it real. But am I just running around talking about Jesus all day? I'm actually not, man. Yeah. Am I trying to live a life that honors him? 100%.
You and I have had actually 2 conversations now. One was just us talking about almost a lot of some similar stuff we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. And then this one right here. And yeah, I never got an impression that you're a person that's trying to push anybody in any direction, which is great. But it's also this. I think someone will listen to this podcast, for example, and they might take something away from, oh, hey, it's okay that I had these feelings, or hey, I'm there too, and now I know he got through it, or hey, I needed to hear this message of what you just talked about right now. And that could be the same person listening to this podcast 3 different times, taking a different message, because that's what they need in their life at that point.
Right.
It's like reading your book. I'm sure if I were to read this book again in a month, there would be something else in this book that I say, wow, almost like I didn't even read this the first time, but now. That's
the truth. And that's like anything. It's like when I get my Bible or someone else's book, or, I'm getting ready to start cracking through your book because I'm super excited about it, I love going back and rereading it, because when someone reads my book, I'll get guys like, I'm back in the church because of you, Jason. Well, humbly, you never want to say, well, it's not because of me, because you sound kind of rude. You're like, oh man, that's great. I'm glad to hear that. We'll be praying for you. Then someone else goes, Jason, I'm telling you what, I struggle with PTSD too, but they're not talking about the church side. Or they'll relate, dude, I had that same call, like the one that cracks me up is people want us to think, oh, so you got the Medal of Valor and all this because you jumped through a window and you refused to leave and you masked this lady up and everything. Bro, I made about 42 mistakes on that fire. All we had to do was breach the wall and bring her out, but we're thinking out how to hoist a 400-pound woman through a hole and all this. And so one guy hits me up, was like, dude, you totally messed up on that call where you went on that lady you rescued, right? And, I'm not a fan of armchair, quarterbacks and the fire service. I said, why? He's like, well, I was just reading into it. He's like, do you ever guys think about breaching the wall? I'm like, bro, when you're getting ready to die, you don't have a whole lot running through your brain, So I was thinking about getting a hose line in there. So like you said, it's cool how everyone gets something out of it from it over and over again. And yeah, my prayer is that a seed will be planted that will make them want to go check out the faith a little more, or go get help or yeah.
And on the Monday morning quarterback topic, by the way, I think we can add this, that everybody is an expert at fighting the fires they weren't at.
Oh man, I tell you what, that's why I refuse. I like to go and watch a couple different things. Okay, that's interesting. But I would never put anything out there because I'm not on scene. I'm not seeing it. Yeah, we could go all day on that, but I'm in agreement.
I'm watching a video from in my town here in Toms River. There's quite a few UFC fighters. I've had a couple on the podcast. And I'm watching a video from one of them, a retired fighter, that says, hey, you know what? I wish people would stop posting so much negative stuff about fighters when they lose, especially. For example, he was saying a fighter had just got knocked out, and people are posting and tagging that fighter when he's in the hospital. He's getting
right.
You know, it's a brutal sport, but he's in the hospital. He's getting stitched up. And people are posting negative stuff on social media, not knowing that, hey, for whatever it is, they're doing something they're passionate about, they love, but at the same time, it is a form of entertainment. Some people like it, some people don't. But they are putting their lives on the line, like the football players and any other pro athlete. But where I'm going with this is, it's easy to sit in a chair at your house and criticize people who are doing something that you're not. Now, on that topic, I want to ask you, you have any critics?
I got a ton of critics, and quite a few of them are the guys I worked with. And I'll be honest with you, I get it. Okay. But here's how I'm going to be more about how what's said, but how I deal with it. It crushed me the day that the doctor said I couldn't be a fireman anymore. Crushed my soul. Now half the people say, well, Jason bailed out early. He could have come back. Oh, he's injured. This guy made back from injury. Bro, I fought for a year and a half to get back with a lawyer, and I couldn't because the injury was that severe. Now, it also saddens me because I wanted to keep doing it. But now I look back and go, let the naysayers be the naysayers, because someone else got left at the OFD for 40 plus years. Why? Because that's where God wanted them to pull people out and do what he's doing. I got left in the fire service for a total of 22 years with a little training at the end and stuff, which, you know, I kind of add on to there too. But 22 years of working in EMS from the age of 18 into my 40s. And I was there because God had a different plan for me. He had a plan for me to now use all the stuff that I learned to go out there on the road and help people in other ways. And I'm cool with that now. So are there naysayers? All the time. Do people want to call me out? All the time. But the beauty about it is I just say, hey, give my bros that I actually worked with at OFD a call. Give my homie Reggie Freeman a call, man. You know, he's the chief of the department and stuff. And ask about the good I'm doing now, as opposed to where I should be.
If you're going to bring up Reggie's name, I just got to say he's a good friend of mine as well. He's a great man. I had lunch with him just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, fantastic.
He's a great guy and stuff. So with me, yeah, we all have critics. You said something to me that resonated with me, and it's actually biblically too. I was looking at there's a reason we also don't teach in our own areas and own towns. There really is. Sometimes it's better to go out and do things. And I don't want to go too far into that, but it's the truth, because biblically it lines up. And I was talking to a pastor about that too. It's better to leave your hometown, get out and teach what you learned there, then just keep teaching the guys inside, you know, and stuff. So it's good stuff there. Yeah.
And I believe the quote I said to you, and this was in our conversation before this, is you can't be a prophet in your own land, or it's hard to be. And there's some truth to that, but at the same time, if you have a message, and this is something I want to share with people, and then I want to get into you writing the book. If you have a message that you feel compelled to share, and you feel a calling to share, whatever it is, share it. Share that message. You are going to have critics. You are going to get ridiculed. It's going to happen. But critics only have power over you if you give it to them. And you can honestly live in a prison with bars that are made from other people's opinions.
Yes.
Or you could just say, no. I had this conversation with my 12-year-old where he was concerned that somebody was saying something negative at him at school. And in school, when you're a 12-year-old in school, the whole world is that school. You know, like, you don't know there's way more than just the 42 kids that you do know in that school. But he was concerned about this negative comment, and I said to him, listen, I want you to understand something. Two things. One is, they're not talking about you because, and I said, I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but they're not even thinking about you. They're thinking about their own stuff. And maybe if they said a negative comment about you, it's in passing. It's nothing big. You're still friends. Let it go. But then I kind of gave him a warning. I said, here's something I learned way too late in life. If you do have a negative thing to say about someone and it's not helpful, don't say it, because what you say about someone is going to get back to them. First of all, it's just not the right thing to do. But what you say about someone is going to eventually get back to them, and it's going to get back to them in a way that you didn't even mean it.
Right.
And then you got to,
Yep.
did you say this about me? Well, hold on. Two of our buddies were talking negatively about Dave, and I jumped in and gave my 2 cents about Dave, and then they went and said to Dave, hey, you know what he said about you? Wait.
Yep. Yeah, we need to build each other, and I fall back on that. We've been called to build each other up, not tear each other down.
Right. That's it. So let's do this. I'm sure that you have friends that have said, hey, man, I got a book in me. I want to write a book.
Yeah.
I get that a lot. I want to write a book. It just happened to me yesterday. Someone says, I want to write a book. I said, call me. I'll talk you through the process that I use, but understand this. My process may not be yours.
Right.
My personal opinion is you want to write a book, write every day, even if it's a sentence, a paragraph, or just notes, and then you can come back later and clean it up. What was your process when you said, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to write a rescue? Were you one of these guys that said, all right, this is going to be harder than I thought, or hey, man, this was simple? For me, it was hard.
It was, well, first off, I said no for way too long, and no, because I was speaking at men's retreats at churches and telling a little bit of my testimony, and people are like, you need to put this all together in one version instead of all these little blogs, right? So I fall back on, I'm too dumb. I'm just a dumb fireman. I just, I dropped out of high school. I can't. I used every excuse in the world to be a wimp about it. Okay, basically. So 1 month during a summer, I said, all right, let me sit down and just go for it. And I wrote the whole book in a matter of like 2 weeks, just knocked it out. Then I read it. I'm like, wow, this doesn't have the arcs. This doesn't have all the stuff other books has. It has the stories. So I started researching how to write a book, how to get published. I knew I didn't have the skill set to do a self-published book, nor the time. So I reached out to some literary agents who then pointed me to some established writers. And I had a writer come alongside me, a professional writer who basically has stories of his own, but he helps people arc their stories, bring them together. So there's nothing fake in the book. Nothing got changed. But to go one scene to the next, growth of a character, things like that, I brought a professional writer in to help me with that. And then we went ahead after that was all good to go. We submitted to a couple of different publishers. And I was so fortunate to get yes from a couple of them. So we got to pick the one that we wanted. I went with Thomas Nelson. Now, I get that that's not the norm and it sounds really fast. But for me, I went the route of making sure that my stories resonated with people. So what I tell writers, find a platform that you can write every day. Whether only one person reads it or 10 people read it, go for it. And then they'll come back and say, no, that's not me. I don't do that. And I'm like, well, then why do you want to write a book? Who's going to read it then, bro? You got to get out there and tell your stories. You got to make sure people are interested and learn that way and get feedback and see the stories they like, see the ones they don't like, but you hit the nail on the head. Write every day in one way or another. But I'm also a huge advocate of also post your stuff out there on social media too. Have the courage to start doing that, because you're going to go from just sitting home to all of a sudden publishing it nationally. That's a huge shock. So it's kind of cool to get little snippets out there, and on the business side, that also makes it where publishers also look for you. There's an audience that already wants to read your stuff too, and they want more out of you. So yes, write every day. It doesn't have to be good. It just has to be something that's on your heart.
Yep, write every day, and you can come back and do what you did and what I do, come back later, look through it. And some of the stuff you're going to look at, you're going to go, wow, this is really good. And some of the stuff you're going to say, no, I need to work on this. Very interesting thing about your book. I mentioned this to you when we spoke. I read the book. I enjoy the book. I look at the back page at the end. Instead of reading what's the book about and who is this guy, I don't read the back until the very end. I just went right into it. And at the end, I go, Thomas Nelson, it figures. Because I'm a fan of the publishing company. My favorite book that I had read was The Traveler's Gift, put out by Andy Andrews, Thomas Nelson, author. So I'm like, well, it figures. They put out really good books that have a great message.
Yeah, and, they craft it really well, and they give you a team. So again, nothing gets changed, but they help craft it, bring it along, get the inside looking right, the outside looking right, give you ideas like, hey, story flow here. Did something else happen at this time in your life too that could actually be more poignant to the story you're trying to get out there? Things like that. You're right. They're brilliant on that. They really help me craft the story in a way that people can understand. And I wanted it to be, as you mentioned, a quick and easy read, even though it was full of a lot of content.
I think that's almost like a principle to help people through challenges in life is if you can't figure out how to get there by yourself, you need to surround yourself with a good team.
Yeah,
And
100%. Check this out. I am your guy when you got to go interior and do a search with or without a hose line. You want to go up on the roof, I'm your guy. If you want me to tie your rope or not to dangle off the side of the Bay Bridge, don't ask me because I don't even feel comfortable tying my own. So therefore, I make sure I have a rescue systems guy around me, vice versa. Maybe the rescue systems guy, he's not cowardice by any means, but maybe he hasn't been up on a roof a lot of times, it's like, hey, let me show you how to cut a little toe hole. Let me show you how to lean into the building and, things like that. You're right. We need to have a team around. I have never put out a fire alone. I've never solved a problem fully alone. It always takes a team of people. And I surround myself with people who are strong where I'm weak and where I'm strong where they're weak and vice versa, because we've all surround ourselves full of strong people. We're going to have some major weaknesses and some big gaps. So I think it's really crucial to identify our own weaknesses and the weaknesses of others and team up where we can be the best benefit to one another. So we have just a badass team to go make things happen. Excuse my language, but it's just how I feel on that subject.
I agree 100%, and it even comes down to building the business or anything. If you're the smartest person in the room, if you're the most competent person, the most well-trained person, the most passionate person, some of that's good. But if you're all of that, you probably have a weak team.
Yeah,
We need somebody who has strengths in areas where we maybe like my man who's sitting next to me silent right now. I'm going to do a shout out to Chris DePiro right now.
Right.
This guy, he can and does succeed in any area of his life he chooses to. He's one of the most successful people I know. And I couldn't do this without him. I mean, I wish you could see our studio right now, what he pulls together. I'm the talking head. He's
right. That's it. That's like with me. I've got the stories. I can tag the stories in to makes it show there. But when it comes time to technology, I'm like, bro, I'm horrible. I'm the least violent person you'll ever meet unless you're electronic. I might hit you with a hammer or throw you in my pool. Okay, electronics kill me. So you're right. That's why you need successful people in all areas. Surround yourself with them. I'm in agreement wholeheartedly with that statement.
So one of the best things that I've heard you say was that, or actually I think it was in your acknowledgments at the back of the book, if I'm not mistaken. You correct me on that, but you said how you didn't even know what an adjective was, or when you wrote the book. And I have said this for several years. I said, I know you're not going to believe me when I talk to people, but I didn't know the difference between an adjective and an adverb. And I typed my first book with 2 fingers using my thumb for the space bar. And so when I read that, I said, I need to talk to this guy. So I think it was in here because I said, that's funny right there.
Yeah, I don't know the difference between noun or pronoun, verb or proverb. I know the book of Proverbs, Proverbs and stuff. But here's the thing, and I'm going to go off on a tangent for a second and pull back.
Go.
This is what drives me nuts about media and fire service. Sometimes we're so quick to just look at the writing as opposed to the content. I don't care if your or you are misspelled as long as I can see the content, because I've read some of the most amazing things like, whoa, this person just poured into my life and my soul and my career based off of these 3 sentences, but they were misspelled. But then the grammar Nazis come and go, I can't take you seriously unless you spell it right. Well, I can't take you seriously because you went to Harvard and didn't write on the back of a fire engine. Both of those statements are lame. You know what I mean? I want to see the content of the person, and I want to see it pour out in their writing without worrying about the grammar as much. And don't get me wrong, there's a time for proper grammar, and we all have a glossary if those are still things. We're writing our reports to make sure we get it right and stuff. But it's just something I wanted to throw out there with you.
When I started my journey as a writer, I think one of the biggest challenges I had was I did not read enough books when I was younger. I wish I did. So there were times, I remember I was probably a sophomore in high school when I had to read something out of a book to the class, and I struggled. I could read, don't get me wrong, but I struggled because between the public speaking portion of it and the reading, and I didn't read that much, so it didn't flow. It would be a little choppy. One of the things I do today, and I'm bringing this up because it's my 13-year-old, he said to me, Dad, he wants to earn some money. And I'm sure there's some kind of electronic widget that he wants. But he wants to earn some money. And he says, can I earn some money? Is there anything I can do around the house to make money? I said, well, no, because your chores around the house you're supposed to do. I'm not going to pay you to do what you're supposed to do. But if you remember what I told you a while ago, I will pay you if you read books. If you read a book, and here's an example. If he reads a book, he's reading one right now. He's almost finished with it, just started it yesterday. But if he reads this book, that book is worth $15. And from that $15, he gets 5 of it. We're going to invest some. We're going to save some. And I'm going to teach him a little bit about money.
Love it.
Yeah. And for me, that's something that'll have.
It's impactful.
Yeah.
It's so impactful in life. And, and I also love your style, because I find it also a blessing maybe that you were in a situation where you didn't have that growing up, because it made you live in your head. And one thing I'm starting to experience is by living in your head for so long, you also look into things a little different. I'm not saying your son's not, don't get me wrong. He's even more well-rounded probably than you and I, right? But by living in your head, you can also develop stories sometimes too. You can look into stories, say, wow, I wonder a little more on that. So I think with you, why you're such a prolific writer and also speaker is part of that was because maybe you did live in your head and didn't learn from some of the writers early on too. And again, it's just speculation, but it's things like that. Right. I always look for the positives in all sides too,
You're right. And there is positive in everything. Yeah. Being an overthinker, that is the truth. I was so stuck in my own head that for me, it's like I would see movies constantly in my head. Right. Somebody's and I a lot of daydreaming in school. I'd start every semester saying, all right, I'm going to make the honor roll this year.
Right.
By the second hour of the first day, I realized I just missed the last 20 minutes. I don't know where it went, but my head was somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I think that's what you just said, I think is something that I hope people understand is you could take what you perceive as a weakness, what could be a challenge in your life, and pull a positive out of that somehow. And, I was just watching a special about a tennis coach who had struggled when he was younger. He was in therapy because he had a hard time just socializing normally. And he said it took him 1 year just to say hello to his therapist, 1 full year.
Wow.
And that was the first word he said. And it took him a full year. But he became a very famous tennis coach, coached some of the best players in the world, like the Williams sisters. And one of the things he said was, the one thing that happened to me during this process of not talking was I was observing. And as an observer, I was noticing things about people. And that ultimately became what he felt was his greatest strength as a coach, is he can read people better because he's focused on their mannerisms, their body language, their gestures, and their gesture clusters. So it's not just what they're saying. He's like your friend reading you saying, no, you're not okay.
Right.
That's a skill.
Right. No, I teach my sons that all the time. I'm like, words, when I'm face-to-face someone, words have fewer meanings than their posture, their language, what's going on. Because I see something more, I'm like, well, you're just kind of rambling right now. So I don't see your words matching up with what you're really saying. So I'll tell my boys, I don't believe a thing that person just told me, like, 'cause they're trying to sell me something, right? Or when I hear someone and maybe they're stumbling over their words, but I see how in tuned their body language is with their words and what they're trying to get to me, I go all in on that person. So I get exactly what you're saying, and also assessing. When someone says I'm fine, like my son, you're not fine, especially a teenage boy, right? So no, you're not fine. You're mad at me for some reason. What's up, bro? Because he can see it. Well, when you start learning people in public too, it's a classic thing. It's like, this person's really hurt. Like, I'll be walking out the street and my heart just crushes sometimes because I can just see someone who's hurting and they didn't say a thing to me, and I think that's just something certain people have. It's an ability, a God-given gift, and it's something that we need to cherish and also make sure we use it for the good to help people too.
Yeah, and that's the key right there, help people. And on that note, I want to say that, Chris, this is something I was thinking about while Jason and I were speaking. At the end of this podcast, I think we need to put up, for anybody that's watching it, like suicide hotline number. And if there's anything, if anybody's dealing with PTSD or struggles like that, first thing you need to know is that there's a good chance, first of all, if you're a firefighter, if you're in law enforcement, your employer, if you're a career, or even if you're volunteer, your community probably has some sort of a employees assistance program where you can get counseling, you can get help. Many of them, it's free and it's confidential. And if not, there's hotlines for this that you can pick up the phone, you can call, you can talk to somebody. And what's really amazing, if you really want to talk about the power of social media, is you can get in contact with people that, and not everybody, but you can get in contact with people like other firefighters and say, hey, you know what, I know you dealt with this. I heard you on that podcast. I just wanted to see if I can talk to you or and communicate with people. I know I do that all the time. I'm sure you do it as well. Oh,
I do it all the time. What I tell guys and gals out there is hit me up, but please, if I don't answer and I miss it somehow, it's not on purpose and I'm not better than you because I'm so busy and stuff. But what I really do is even after I talk to someone, I say, I can't help you locally. I want to point you to your local. I want you to hear how my local brothers and sisters and all this stuff that I have surrounding me from my department help me. I want to direct you towards that. Now, I'm not pushing you off because I know firefighter. Oh, you're pushing off. I am not pushing you off, but I may be 1,000 miles away from you, and a phone call with me is not going to fix you because I can't fix anyone. I want to be clear on that. I can just point you to the help that you need and walk alongside you from a distance and check up on you to see how you're doing. So I'm a true believer in that because I've had many firefighters reach out to me from departments, big and small, career volunteer, everywhere, just saying that, they need a little help. And then I say, well, what can we find locally? More than just a good uplifting conversation with me. What can we do to find some local help for you? And it's all those different programs you mentioned is where it's truly at too. And their local churches too. I want to throw that out there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So, Jason, I want to thank you so much for giving me an hour of your time just to come on and talk to our listeners. I'm sure people are going to take a lot of value away from this. I'll ask, where's the best place to get your book? Is it on Amazon or is there?
Yeah, I always tell people the cheapest place you can find it, but it's everywhere. It's Amazon. The publisher put together a website called rescuerbook.com. That's just rescuerbook.com, and it lists a bunch of different stores where it's available. So yeah, wherever you can grab a copy, go for it. Amazon usually seems to be the best spot for folks to find it.
Amazon's the best spot to find anything these days.
That's what I'm hearing, So, but I heard lately it's been sold out, so it's getting harder and harder to get by and stuff, which caught me off guard. I'm like, wow, that's cool. I guess that's a good problem to have. So,
yeah, well, that is a good problem to have. So congratulations on the success of the book and continued success, and hopefully we'll see it on a silver screen one day. I appreciate you, my friend, and I look forward to many more conversations. I know this might be I think I might be coming on your podcast, but other than that, I know we're going to have a lot of non-recorded conversations that I'm really looking forward to.
I have a feeling where our paths are going to cross in person too here shortly too. So that'll be some good stuff. So appreciate you, man. And I enjoy your podcast so much, and I can't wait to have you on mine, bro. So thanks for all you do.